All right, good afternoon, everybody. Fast developments. We're going to bring you the latest. My goodness, what a day. September 11th, obviously, but we have a manhunt right now going on to find the killer. Gian says we're good to find the killer, and they sure seem like they know who they're looking for. It sure sounds like they know who they're looking for with this. And of course, we're talking about the situation with Charlie Kirk, and there are developments. I believe we're going to be starting in just a couple of moments. Now this is different. Let me see this. Insensitive post. Wow. I didn't see what that is. Okay, we're going to be starting in just a couple moments, folks, but this is the story. The FBI, there's even now a $100,000 reward that the FBI has put out. Anyone with any information, let me share that actually, regarding that could lead to the arrest. I believe they know who they're looking for. It sure seems that way. Well, let me just double check. Oh, okay. We're going to start right away with Stephanie Murphy. I think I get the sense they know who they're looking for. Just the way, they did release the, which I'm going to put up right now. We now know what the assassin looks like. This story is just so horrible, absolutely horrific. Right now, and the FBI is offering a $100,000 reward. Now, I know people, you may say, how can I help? Well, I put out the description. If you share it on social media, you never know that how randomly someone could then come across that. So, but I get the impression the FBI is now offering a $100,000 reward. Information leading to the identification, arrest the individuals, or period, S, plural, responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk, Utah Valley University in Utah. So again, we're going to put that up. And I recognize, but we do have people all over the country that watch this. But I believe you may be, how could I help? You never know that you could share something and then someone says, that looks like the person that I saw this morning, or I know who that person is, and I think I know where they were headed. So we're going to start in just 2 minutes, but there's been seemingly some stops and starts with this story as far as last night. That was somewhat unusual, to say the least. FBI, Kash Patel, the director, puts out that, we have a suspect in custody, and they talked to two people, and neither one of them panned out as the person. So that person is still on the loose. We're going to bring in Stephanie Murphy in just a moment. I did want to just quickly put up the image of the suspect, and I'll talk a little bit about it, but we'll quickly, and then we're going to talk to Stephanie Murphy about some of the. Oh, we're going to come back to her. Well, hold on, Stephanie. Hold on one moment. We're going to come back to her in just a second. There it is. I just wanted to put up. There is the suspect that they're looking for with this in what they're calling a political assassination. of Charlie Kirk. So, folks, at 106, we are going to start. It is the John DePietro show. This is rapid developments with this massive manhunt. And we're going to talk to Stephanie about that and also about some other legal stories. But right now, and I know that people tune in and, what's the latest? The latest right now is the FBI, and there's the image on the screen. This is the person they believe to be the shooter, and they're looking for information. The FBI has now even upped a $100,000 reward for anyone. So that may have information on that. And with social media, as much as someone may say, hey, listen, I live in, Rhode Island, Mass, Connecticut, what can I do? But you can actually, just by sharing it and getting the word out. All right, let's bring her on. She's our legal expert. It is attorney. Actually, let me do that. And there we go. Attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, granted, the person's on the other side of the country, we believe. But what do you make of this situation going on with they're calling an assassination on Charlie Kirk?
Well, I think the updates are coming kind of fast, and we got a lot more information today than we did yesterday. I was surprised to see, the two possible suspects were released, but they seem to have given the public a lot more information and have even released that photo that you just put up. There's more on that photo than, I thought there would be from the first reports of somebody being in all black and possibly a mask. But there's definitely some facial recognition and some, something that somebody can point out and possibly identify this person. So I think it's a great photo that's out to the public.
Stephanie, many times, and you may deal with clients or people that they've done something and maybe they think that no one knows. To me, this is an example that the FBI, they've had this photo. They're waiting this amount of time. Now they release it. My point is, people that are on the loose, they may think the police have no idea who they are. This is a pretty good example that apparently the authorities, now the FBI, they have a pretty good image of who it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about it before, John, in terms of sometimes the police always don't release all the information for a variety of reasons, that during an investigation, they don't release all the information so that they can keep it contained and then use it to their advantage. So it's definitely something law enforcement should do, and they do all the time.
Any thought on yesterday? There were two people that they had in custody, and then the police then ended up releasing those people. As a matter of fact, last night when they had the press conference, the director of the FBI even said, oh, we have a suspect in custody. What's your advice to people that might be in a situation like that? They're totally innocent, but who knows what it is that sparked that the police actually apprehended them and took them into custody?
Right. And my advice for those people is a little bit different than I typically give on the show. If you had nothing to do with it and just in the wrong place at the wrong time and maybe wearing black or was seen on video in like a certain spot, you should disclose where you were, why it's not you and stuff like that. It's one of these very limited times that I would advise people to, share the information. There's somebody out there, a killer out there, and they could possibly help and inform them of what they knew and definitely clear their name so that they were released. So that must have been what they did. And they were able to get those two people cleared and then move on to, find the real person.
Now, some of the local stories that I wanted to ask Stephanie about. We have this story, a Warren town worker suspended, charged with embezzlement. Stephanie, what about maybe sometimes people say, hey, they let me use these things. Sometimes they let me use something on a weekend. There could be situations, I'm not saying in this particular situation, but there could be situations where people, for whatever reason, they feel, or maybe it's done in the past, that they're free to use equipment. And then you have something like this happen where suddenly you have someone charged with embezzlement.
Yeah, I would definitely, if a client called me and was concerned about it, saying, in the past I've been able to use company's equipment or town or government equipment, I would really try to get that in writing and stuff like that. This is a perfect example of maybe this person thought he had permission, or maybe he thought they would never know, but he is using equipment that doesn't belong to him. It seems outside of the scope of work, and it definitely fits under the embezzlement charge. I think there's great mitigation and, great things that a defense attorney can point out, but I understand where the charge comes from, and now it'll be up to the defense attorney and for the state to prove that charge. But it'll be very interesting to kind of learn, whether or not he had permission, how many times, that equipment had been used in the past, if other co-workers are doing the same thing. So I think there's a lot more to the story that hasn't been told yet.
Yeah, we do hear that from time to time. City or town workers, they're found with things at home, or who knows, a situation where maybe there was one manager that allowed employees to use a certain piece of equipment on a weekend or for a period of time, and then suddenly a new person comes in and you have an embezzlement charge. Now, Stephanie, I did get some email from, or messages, I should say, on social media, people asking me to ask you about this. And this is the convicted killer busted in Providence drug dealing investigation. You have this couple, David Mello, his girlfriend, and they're accused of distributing cocaine in the city. But what people were wanted me to ask you about is the police, they claim they found a bag of cocaine in his pants and 6,000 in a birthday gift bag in the car that they were in. There was also a baby in the car. What can you tell us about this story?
So I don't know too much about it other than kind of what you just said, John. But in terms of, the investigation, the search, there's different issues involved in any search, as we talked about, and whether or not there's permission, what they found, is a person on probation, is a person on bail. I'm not too familiar with that story, but it seems that, there's a bunch of things going on in terms of the search, in terms of the police investigation, that I believe more information will come out about, more information about the couple.
What about this business of people that keep a lot of cash around? Investigators found 25,000 at his home in the city, 40,000 at a storage unit in Cranston, and 20,000 at his father's home in Fall River. Do you get clients? I have, again, people say, "Hey, why is it suddenly against the law to if you want to keep your savings in cash?"
I know I have a lot of clients who might get stopped for, a drug charge or something like that, and the state will initiate what's called a forfeiture action and say that, the money that was in different bank accounts or money that was in a safe or under the mattress is associated with drug usage and the selling of drugs. So that's what a forfeiture action is. And my clients really do have a problem. They have an uphill battle to show that they got that money legitimately, whether it was through
Hmm.
an inheritance, a gift, jewelry, stuff like that. If you are going to keep that cash there and stuff like that, I would just always be on err on side of caution, just have documentation of where that cash came from and stuff. Because if there is a warrant that's issued on the house and drugs are found and all this cash is found, the state can definitely try to seize it and say that it was part of the product of selling drugs.
Wow. Okay, that's when it gets really serious. This next story is very unusual. Providence school behavior interventionist accused of biting a student. Providence police said an elementary school interventionalist was arrested. Supposedly, there was some kind of an incident, and a student and this individual, this woman, and went into the school's nurse, and whatever happened, where he threw paint against the room, across the room, because she wouldn't let him paint. And in an altercation, they're alleging that there was actually a minor bite. It didn't break the skin, but supposedly you could actually see a bite mark here. What do you think of this story?
I mean, that's absolutely crazy at any.
It's oh, okay. We lost it for whatever reason. All right. Well, this happens. All right, we went dark. Let me check it out. Oh, all right. I'm not exactly sure what happened. We were doing fine there for a minute. Sometimes she can connect back, and we'll come back again, folks. We're live, and we'll see if we get her to pop back in. But that story, I don't know exactly what happened um, with this woman in Providence. I don't know if you can. I don't know the circumstance of what was the altercation, but where she was, in essence, okay, let's see if she clicks back in. Where this woman, you know, bit this student, and again, didn't break the skin. I don't know exactly if it was, I don't know what was happening with that. I was trying to envision. It's one thing if someone says, hey, they grabbed me, right? Or they pushed me, or this, it's not even a teacher, behavioral interventionist, whatever that means. I guess to me, it's like a new phrase for guidance counselor. But I could see where someone said they grabbed me by the shirt or pushed me against the wall or something like that, trying to restrain. But with this, oh, good, she's back. What is different about this is, oh, good, and there she is, Stephanie. You're back. You know, I was just saying, Stephanie, I could see if, and sometimes you hear this where there's a fight in a school, and a teacher says, you know, they grabbed a student and put him up against the wall, or you know, a student says, hey, he, you know, shoved me down or whatever. But the biting, that's unusual. I don't recall an incident of someone being charged with biting.
I haven't, I can't either, John. And you rarely hear about biting, you know, in schools and stuff like that, especially coming from a teacher or an aide or anything like that. Like you're right. You hear about maybe touching or grabbing a child in order to get them away, or break up a fight and stuff like that. But biting is a whole different level.
Finally, folks, it's time for Murphy's Law. This is a story that attorney Stephanie Murphy has found. And what do you have for us this week, Stephanie?
So I was reading, and I was kind of interested in that East Greenwich story about the crash that happened in East Greenwich on Division Street, where the suspect was actually left people in the car, left the scene, and it was found by drones and canine dogs. So it kind of comes back to a lot of our stories of, you know, do you turn yourself in? Do you stay at the scene and all of that? But not only is he charged with the accident, it seems like driving under the influence, but now he also has leaving the scene in order to complicate the ordeal. But I thought the canine usage and the drones, you know, right away, you know, found the suspect and he got arrested and charged very quickly and appropriately. So using all those resources in order to, you know, make the proper arrest and find the person, I think is very promising. And I was impressed with how quickly they found this person.
Yeah, they did not help by trying to flee the scene. So again, folks,
Oh,
she is
especially
Attorney Stephanie Murphy.
you leave your car there. So yeah, it's an interesting story.
Yeah, she is on the go. Stephanie, great job as always, and we'll talk to you again.
Thanks, John. Have a great day.
All right, folks. And again, she is, you know, in and out of court. So that's why we try to be flexible. Now, remember, I saw, by the way, we were live last night on the scene with that car crash. If you haven't seen the video, it's wild. And then we were right there. We were the only media outlet. They had the drones, they had the canine. We had East Greenwich, State Police, Warwick, and Coventry all right there. You can see it all on depetro.com. Now, there's a guy on the loose from Coventry. And I saw on my page, his cousin put, he's my cousin. I wish he would turn himself in. Folks, remember, Marin, Barrett, and Murphy. Call her, 401-228-8271. Your fight becomes their fight. 50 years combined Rhode Island criminal defense experience. It's Marin, Barrett, and Murphy. Call them, 401-228-8271. Now, this portion of our program, I am going to give you the latest now with Charlie Kirk. This portion of our program is brought to you by PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Folks, fall is in the air. You know, as much as like, and I talk about it, I hate the end of summer, but this is very enjoyable weather. Fall is in the air. Homegrown mums and kale are outstanding. Mums and kale, 4-inch, 12-inch pots. They have pumpkins, straw bales, cornstalks, gourds, Indian corn, native vegetables, local honey, and more. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. Now, I mentioned we do have the video from last night where these people apparently OD'd. They went crashing right into the spot right next to the Pilates studio, right near Health Tracks, right near Dave's on East Greenwich. And we have the video up. They crashed the car. The three people, or two of them, basically walked away. They caught the woman on the side of the building. We have her going to the rescue. And then we were there part of the search as they were looking for the fugitive. They got the mail. You see it all right there. It's on depetro.com, brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. Lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. They're waiting for you at the Coesit Inn. All right. Now, where do things stand in regards to the suspect? So we have a manhunt going on. And there's several things that are going on right now. And I am aware that it's September 11th. And a lot of times I would do the whole show on September 11th. And maybe we'll even do an additional show at some point. But this is the suspect they're looking for right now. And what I want to mention, a behavior teacher. Okay. Still, the biting is, that's a different level. I want to just make sure, especially in a story like this, that we have the latest. Now, I'm telling you right now that my information tells me that they know who they're looking for. But this individual, it's very possible, this seems that it was certainly planned, right? Not only planned, but there was definitely planning. The individuals, they knew Charlie Kirk was coming to the campus, and they knew he was coming to the campus, and certainly scoped it out. Someone familiar with firearms. That was one shot, deadly shot to the neck, much like President Kennedy in Dallas. What's also interesting about that, think if you have a bulletproof vest and body armor, people are saying why you should have been wearing a bulletproof vest. Charlie Kirk had security, but he had security down in front of where the stage was, right? Just to make sure some idiot doesn't come up and attack him. And they had some, but it's a college. And the way it's set up like an amphitheater where it then shoots down, or, slopes down, I should say. But I'm also just looking at he had a shirt on, the shooter they're looking for, land of the free, home of the brave. I don't know what to make of that shirt, but I want to just make sure, okay. They did recover the rifle. They also recovered a screwdriver. Matthew Dowd was fired from MSNBC. That's not a bad thing. The guy shouldn't have been there. I heard it yesterday. It was horrific. But I also want to touch on, I've been to Provo, Utah. It's beautiful. I was in Provo, Utah in 2015. In 2015, that's interesting. Let me just check this out. Is that where they're looking right now? I'm just trying to, I think that's interesting that, okay. I also want to, wow. Some campuses are being locked down after receiving threats. Alabama State University, Virginia State. There was a swatting call in Cranston this morning. I want to talk a little bit about our local leaders and their reaction to this. LA Times, though, Charlie Kirk shooting reignites campus free speech issues in Trump era. It's just terrible what is happening. And let me just check. FBI Salt Lake City. They're offering the reward, and they have, but it sure seems as though the gunman planned on being on the loose. Now, I understand this is a very sensitive time. He's not even a politician. I want to also mention that where people like Seth Magaziner and Governor McKee, and they're saying, we got to tone down, the Republicans need to tone down the rhetoric. He wasn't an elected official. He was a young activist who's a conservative, who's also a Christian, who would speak on college campuses. And so this business of Seth Magaziner, by the way, it should also be pointed out, notice Congressman Seth Magaziner, he won't refer to President Trump as President Trump. It's always just Trump. It's always just Trump. I'm telling you right now, this is my view. I believe the words of, especially the Rhode Island elected officials, and I say that because they're not leaders, but whether it's Governor McKee or Sheldon Whitehouse or Gabe Amo, or it rings hollow. Governor McKee, political violence and blah, blah, blah. Folks, let's just be very clear about this. He will not sit down in a room. Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee will not sit in a room for 5 minutes with Republican House Minority Leader Mike Chippendale or Republican Senate Minority Leader Jessica De La Cruz. Will not sit down with them. Canceled a fundraiser that was going to be held at the home of a Trump supporter. I'll tell you, they fuel the political rhetoric, and they're shameful about it. And I think it's empty. I think all of there's no room. They say that, but they absolutely encourage it. They do nothing to dispel the myth of it. Now, Stephen Crowder has a piece, and there's some reporting out there that there was some etchings that they found on the ammo and other things like that. And what was involved with that? It sure seems to be pointing towards what was the sin of Charlie Kirk. The sin of Charlie Kirk with some people, and it's notice Governor McKee and Sheldon Whitehouse and the Rhode Island Democrat Party, they will not condemn some of the vicious remarks that come from the left. His crime was he didn't think children should go through indoctrination into switching gender. That's what it was about. That's why they hated him. And that's why it's frightening to see some of the video online of people who were celebrating with what happened, and amongst young people. And as far as when we spoke to Dan McGowan of the Boston Globe last hour, he talked about there were protests when Charlie Kirk was going to go speak at Brown University in 2019. He did go and speak, but the Rhode Island State House operates the same way. There's no room in their mind, and I'm talking about all the Democrats, there's no room for any political discourse that is different than the message that they're trying to put out there. Zero. By the way, Val Lawson, the Senate president, our local media, I think it's a swing and a miss on this. I think so. That's just my, Channel 12 has a story, Governor McKee's statement, blah, blah, blah. But they don't ask any questions about it. Kathy Gregg of the Providence Journal, gun violence. Charlie Kirk was gunned down because of his beliefs. FBI has images of person of interest in Charlie Kirk killing, and that is true, by the way. But it's all boilerplate. The Rhode Island officials, as they say, who are offering up, there's no room. They all say the same thing. Notice they all say the same thing. There's no room for political violence and blah, blah, blah. They say that, but they don't do anything to change the narrative. They don't. It's very sad, folks. Val Lawson, president of the Senate, why isn't our local media asking her, why hasn't she put out a statement condemning this? Because there's no one worse with this rhetoric than the union goons. And as I also mentioned about our local press, they'll run the statement of Governor McKee, and they'll run the statement, Seth Magaziner says we need more, understanding, and the Republicans need to stop this rhetoric, and blah. But they never call out the violent rhetoric from many of the union leaders that control the Democrat Party, right? Sabatoni, the drunk from Johnson, Crowley, much of the rhetoric from the Democrat Party, they encourage it. They fuel it. As we've talked about, Governor McKee, Governor McKee will not sit in a room for 5 minutes with anyone that has an R in front of their title. Zero. Why doesn't he wants to talk about bipartisanship. Why doesn't he take this opportunity to sit down for 5 minutes with Mike Chippendale, with State Senator Jessica De La Cruz, maybe even Joe Powers, chairman of the Republican Party? They won't do it. And this business that tomorrow night there's going to be a candlelight vigil. I'm actually too angry right now for a candlelight vigil. I am. Because Cicilline used to fuel it. Cicilline used to say, I've been around these Tea Party wackos, and Seth Magazine is blaming President Trump. They're never held accountable. The fact of the matter is, our local press, they, they're in lockstep with the Democrat leaders. I mentioned Helena Folks. I'm running for governor again, and then boom, and we have to stop Trump, and he shouldn't be president, and we're going to drive him and his followers out of Rhode Island. Is that bringing people together? Um, is that trying to represent everyone? They don't. They don't in any way. It's really sickening. And Enrique Sanchez, he hasn't been disciplined by the Democratic Party. Representative Enrique Sanchez, he hasn't faced any consequences from the Democrat Party. We're going to make those members of ICE, we're going to make their families, their wives, widows. We're going to go at, this will be a day of reckoning. How can he talk that way? Right? Senator Tierra Mack, Charlie Kirk, what's the bad news? They're disgraceful. And they are an embarrassment, the way they act and perform. Enrique Sanchez, he's a Democrat. He's a Democrat. He didn't face any consequences. These Gestapo thugs. It fuels a narrative. It fuels a violent rhetoric narrative. Folks, this portion of our program, I want to just check, because I don't want them to, if they catch I believe they know who they're looking for. I believe they know who they're looking for. They're not saying it just yet, but I think it's very possible that the individual that they're looking for, they know who it is. They knew that it was a college-age person, and they knew, they have gate route. They have when that individual arrived on the campus, made his way to the roof, although we're going to have to hold off to see. Remember, with the local press and all the press, the most important thing, should they capture this person today, will be to use the right pronouns. This portion of our program is brought to you by Propane Plus. Call them today, 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus. For all your heating and cooling, you just log onto their website. It's propaneplus.com. Residential or commercial, type in your zip code, always there for you. It's Propane Plus. Matthew Dowd. I used to have Matthew Dowd on many years ago. He worked for ABC. He was a pollster. And he is completely gone off the deep end. And, I'm sure, so he was fired, apparently, by MSNBC. But look at what it took for him to actually get fired. And I want to just play the clip where you actually hear the MSNBC anchor even saying Kathy Tur trying to rein him in. But this is what he said. This is the network of Seth Magaziner and Sheldon Whitehouse.
But following up on what was just said, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions.
That is so in essence blaming him. So blaming him. And also he was also saying, well, maybe it was just a salute that they were firing off. As if maybe that was, you could tell right away just how horrific it was. If you've seen the video of Charlie Kirk with, the shot at the neck. I have the sound of that I did want to play, but folks, don't be fooled by, and I don't think a lot of you are, but I don't like how our local media, they just take whatever is said and they just, oh, Governor McKee says we all need to come. They don't question the fact that you say that. Why is it that no one can work in the administration, or you won't be caught dead in a room with anyone that's a Republican? So this is from the FBI press conference earlier.
This morning, I can tell you that we have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. It is a high-powered bolt-action rifle. That rifle was recovered in a wooded area where the shooter had fled. The FBI laboratory will be analyzing this weapon. Investigators have also collected footwear impression, a palm.
Also got a screwdriver. So he must have used the screwdriver when he put the rifle together and then just, abandoned it.
Of the shooter. Starting at 11:52 a.m., the subject arrived on campus, shortly away from campus. We have tracked his movements onto the campus, through the stairwells, up to the roof, across the roof to a shooting location. After the shooting, we were able to track his movements as he moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled off of the campus into a neighborhood. Our investigators have worked through those neighborhoods, contacting anybody they can with doorbell cameras, witnesses, and have thoroughly worked through those communities, trying to identify any leads. We do have good video footage of this individual. We are not going to release that at this time. We are working through some technologies and some ways to identify this individual. If we are unsuccessful, we will reach out to you as the media and we will push that publicly to help us identify them. But we are confident in our abilities right now, and we would like to move forward in a manner that keeps everyone safe and moves this process appropriately. Last night I communicated with Erica.
All right. Now, again, that was the FBI earlier this morning. So, they have the individual arriving on campus. Now, Steven Crowder, he is an email, and supposedly elevated position. All cartridges have engraved wording on them expressing transgender and anti-fascist ideology. Folks, that is the Rhode Island Democrat Party. That is the Rhode Island Democrat Party right there. This is to take the time to write on the cartridge. The spent cartridge was still chambered in addition to 3 unspent rounds. All had engraved wording on them expressing transgender and anti-fascist ideology. That's what you hear from the Rhode Island Democrat Party. And again, folks, I come back to, listen, people can have disagreements, but never forget this. And we're hearing that they now believe, it sure seems like they know who it is, and they're going to move in on them. But never forget, and our local media, to me, they enable it. The day that it was announced that this person was the new chair of the Progressive Democrats in Rhode Island, Donald Anderson became Donnie Anderson and was elected the chairperson of the Progressive Women's Caucus in Rhode Island. Do you understand? I'm not trying to, I understand the severity of this, but let's just be very clear about something. That is not, they enable the Democrat Party. Governor McKee signed off on that. Magazina signed off on it. No one objected. No one said, gee, that seems odd. He can, listen, I don't care. He can dress up, put on a dress, grow his hair long, change his name. It's one thing when he is a 72-year-old man doing that. It's much different when you encourage that to confused young males or confused young females. And they develop this rage Can you imagine being much like the recent shooter? They're in their early 20s. They were told, if you make the transition, become a girl, you're going to be much happier. I have no idea what would be wrong with just being a gay guy or just being a lesbian, for crying out loud. What? But they convince them it's not enough. No, you need to fully change your gender. And they're in their early 20s and they're just filled with rage and most likely, lack of better expression, but buyer's remorse. And they feel misled and let down, and they just have this uncontrollable anger and rage. And look at the way it's manifesting. I want to just make sure we don't miss anything. Police presence at Mass High School after staffer's comment on Charlie Kirk sparks concern. All right, I want to let me check this story. And I want to be very clear, as I've stated. Someone is happy as this is not about treating everyone equally. This is not, I want to be very clear about this. This is not about a prejudice or you're racist or you're homophobe or anything like that. There's a world of difference of an adult that says, you know what, I just, it must be the way I'm wired, but I just prefer the company of women. A woman that says, I want to marry a woman. I want to be around a woman. That's who I'm comfortable with. And I'm in love with a woman. That is totally understandable, acceptable. They should not face any harassment. Conversely, adult men that say, I want to be with another guy. I want to wake up with another guy. I want to go to bed with another guy. I want to marry another guy. Totally fine. But it's the Democrats, the progressive Democrats that say and go after these children and target them. The teachers' unions targeting depressed teens, saying you'd be much happier if you switched gender. It's so, and look at how our local media, they boycott Nicole Salas and won't give her any type of press or airtime or anything. Because what did Nicole Salas say? I don't think behind a parent's back, a teachers union member should be saying to a 13-year-old boy, you're going to be much happier, we're going to make you a girl. And then they have irreversible biological changes done. I want to just read this story. Holden, Mass. Police officers were assigned to patrol the campus of a Massachusetts high school. A staffer's comment on the killing of Charlie Kirk sparked safety concerns. A staff member at Wachusett Regional High took to social media to share their thoughts. These comments sparked heated debate. Well, they were wildly insulting. I saw those. So now they have police at the school. Well, that person should be terminated. The school member that put that out should absolutely be terminated. But it's a double standard. Of course it's acceptable in Massachusetts, like everything else that's acceptable in Massachusetts. Folks, I also want to be very clear. I admit this absolutely, like many people, it's so sad. It's terrible. I just want to see it was a teacher that put it out. Well, there's a lot of them. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Wachusett School District in Holden. Wow. What's her name? Anne Marie Donahue. Yep. We're not offering sympathy. Wow. Terrible. It rings hollow because they don't mean it. If Congressman Seth Magaziner meant it, had any respect, see, they can't. I refuse to be, I'm not falling for it. as I say, it rings hollow. I'm not trolling Governor McKee. I'm not trolling Sheldon Whitehouse or Matos or any of them. I don't believe them. I watch their actions. They have no interest in trying to get along with anyone. And they dehumanize the other side. Governor McKee will spend hours with labor leaders. He will not sit for 5 minutes in a room with a Republican. There's something wrong. Sabina Matos always blame it's these MAGA Republicans. They're constantly preaching it and getting away with it. And the union members are the worst. The union leaders. They want to make life as unpleasant as possible for anyone that thinks differently than them. I think this, many people are saying, you know, this is like a war. They won't even acknowledge their part in the whole thing. They won't acknowledge, and the way they allow people like Sanchez and Tierra Mack and the labor leaders, Crowley, and they won't, the elected officials, that they won't even acknowledge that they allow them to put out violent, hateful rhetoric with no consequences. Zero. Folks, this first portion of our program is brought to you by ServPro of Providence. Remember, call them today, 401-941-5500. They're fast, thorough, professional. If you have fire damage, water damage, smoke damage, ServPro of Providence, 401-941-5500. You know, I admit, I have to, I don't like to get angry like that, but it does. It makes me very angry. I know there's going to be a candlelight vigil, supposedly tomorrow night at the State House. I'm not ready for candlelight vigil. I'm not ready for that. Am I going to the Wilbur to see that zero? No, I'm not. No. A million other things to do. Oh my God. Even they allow it in Cranston. Terrible. But I'm not feeling that we have to come together. I've lived it. They have no intention of getting along with anyone. And you know, don't judge them by their actions. They show nothing, zero, as far as being open-minded with anyone that has any political thoughts, principles, or policies that they disagree with, or theories, or beliefs is what it's really about. So make no mistake about it. I'm not going to be fooled by if the Rhode Island Democrat Party had a choice of sitting down and having a meeting and listening to someone, this is who they would sit with. They would not sit with the Charlie Kirk. As a matter of fact, to Seth Magaziner, to Governor McKee, to Sheldon Whitehouse, Charlie Kirk and his follower Trump. And I hate to say it, but it's true. It's a punchline to them. It is. They don't show any decency. They don't show any respect. You know, this is beyond that, though. It's much beyond that. It's what we're supposed to listen to and what you're supposed to listen to. If he were, prior to 24 hours ago when this happened, if you said his name to Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee or Seth Magaziner, who I detest, or Sheldon Whitehouse, who's just a bomb thrower, they have no respect. They don't respect people that have a different opinion of theirs. They don't. They mock and ridicule. It was Cicilline really led the charge with that type of thing. Cicilline used to talk about, it's how they're described. I just want to make sure that there's no, that they get the shooter in custody and that we miss it. So that's why I just want to monitor things, folks. But I want to be very clear what you should know. So there's the suspect. So it sure seems very planned. I mean, look at sunglasses, hat. Maybe didn't count on that angle. Someone that knows this individual could pick out and figure out who it is, I would think. But right now, much like Luigi managed to get away, Luigi Mangione, who gunned down the Brian Thompson of United Healthcare in New York City. Right now, there is a manhunt. Right now, whoever this person is on the loose. But how long did they plan that they're going to be on the run? You can't stay on the run that long. I don't think so. But this is someone, what can we glean from this right now? For now, Utah does have the death penalty. We don't know if this person has another weapon. If they had access to that type of weapon, the rifle, and by the way, Utah is very free with that. In Utah, you could, now this person supposedly had the gun in the bag. It looks like he's wearing some kind of a backpack, and then they found a screwdriver, so easily could have put the rifle together up on the roof or somewhere close to that. But we don't know where this person is from, if they're on their way back there. The authorities seem to have an idea of who this is, and they certainly have a lot of evidence at the scene. But as of right now, I'm angry about this. I don't feel we have to come together. I don't feel that way. I see it's one side that's enacting all the violence. President Trump almost assassinated Butler, Pennsylvania. What we saw yesterday is what could have happened to President Trump if the shooter in Butler, Pennsylvania had been a better shot. So whoever this individual is, they certainly can handle a weapon. One shot, probably with a scope, and for those that have seen it, struck the neck, much like President Kennedy. And that's all it took. Looks like it even struck an artery. That could have been President Trump. You had the second assassination attempt on President Trump. You had Steve Scalise. Seth Magaziner starts going back to Gabby Giffords and everything else. This is, you had the young staffer killed in D.C. and beaten up in D.C. There is something wrong. Okay. Well, right now, there's all kinds of swatting incidents going on. Okay. Hoyt Avenue has some kind of an incident. All the nuts are out in this type of an atmosphere. Let me just check. Okay. But somebody knows. But everyone can react differently. I also want to mention, these are my words. I was going to have a member of the Young Republicans on about an entirely different issue. And then last night they put out a joint statement with the Young Democrats. I have no use for a group like that. None. How can you put out, and listen, it's a free country and they can do whatever the hell they want. But thank you, Ray. How can they put out a statement with the same people that would treat Charlie Kirk as though he were a punchline? Governor McKee, Seth Magaziner, Sheldon Whitehouse, Matos, they all talk, they mock not only Charlie Kirk, but his followers. Elizabeth Warren, same thing. The first thing they do is start blaming President Trump. But make no mistake about it, this is a very intensive manhunt. This sure seems like someone, much like Luigi Mangione, who made his way into New York, escaped through Central Park on a bicycle, and then jumped on a train And then he got caught because he went inside of a McDonald's. Luigi Mangione, if he's the one that basically executed Brian Thompson of United Healthcare, if he had, I don't know, I don't know if he had a vehicle, but if he had just not sat in the McDonald's, if he had ordered, covered his face a little bit, put on sunglasses, whatever, instead of sitting in the McDonald's in Pennsylvania, he would have still been on the loose for a while. So, but right now, at 1:56, are people, looking for an update? You still have a massive manhunt. They now have a $100,000 reward. I'm telling you, this sounds like they know who they're looking for. Now they're just trying to locate where this person is and using all resources. They could be closing in right now on who this person is. But we're seeing several reports now that there were some correlation to transgender with the cartridges or something with the weapon that was used. Folks, this portion of our program, don't forget about Watson Materials. Call Sean, request a quote, 401-885-0600. Landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone, decorative stone. Watson Materials. Call them today, request a quote, 401-885-0600. The most complete landscape materials in southern New England. It's Watson Materials. Sean, they do a fantastic job there. The most complete selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island. So, folks, like a lot of people, I'm angry. I feel terrible. I have children that are wildly upset. I have one child that dealt with Charlie Kirk at Fox. I have another one that works in the administration. Suddenly they're what? They're targets, that they're fair game because of their beliefs. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. Don't listen to Governor McKee. Don't listen to Elizabeth Warren. Don't listen to MSNBC and these people that say, Trump's to blame for this. Well, we saw yesterday, and that is a very gruesome video of when someone, gets shot in the neck. And that could have been President Trump. Instead, it clipped his ear. But think about that. Very, very close to the neck. And then what the end result is. It looked like Charlie Kirk sadly lost his life very, very quickly after that gunshot, when his body just collapsed. But I believe, these are my words, I think the words of the elected Democrat officials in our area, everyone else can talk about nationwide. I'm telling you, in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, to me, it rings hollow because of their attitude, actions, and the way they dismiss and disparage anyone that has an opposing view. 100%. Well, folks, the manhunt continues. If you're listening to the radio, stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news. The latest right now, FBI on the screen. There's the suspect they're looking for. The manhunt continues. We'll be doing Road Patrol Live later. Stay safe on this September 11th.